Hey Internet. So it's been a while since I made a video. That is because, well, I blew up the X3. Several times, in fact. As you may or may not know, I've been upgrading my 2012 BMW X3 from the stock 300 horsepower to 500 horsepower. But, as I'm learning, modifying an older BMW has its risks. I'll talk more about that later in the video. At this point, we've already made some interior improvements. We installed aftermarket tune-friendly plugs and coils, a cold air intake, and the JB4 tune. In this video, we will be installing the VSRF Intercooler upgrade. We also attempted to install a Turbosmart blow-off valve. This was the first issue we encountered after installing the JB4 tune. Basically, the OEM blow-off valve couldn't handle the increased boost. We'll discuss that more in a bit. But first, let's go through the installation for the upgraded intercooler. VSRF makes an aftermarket intercooler that is much larger and more efficient than the BMW OEM intercooler. Intercoolers are important, especially when you start pushing more than the factory boost, since everything will run hotter and you want to keep the air entering the intake as cool as possible. First order of business, I put the X3 up on blocks. Then I removed the undercarriage trim. There are two screws and a clip on each side of the intercooler that need to be removed. The clip doesn't need to come all the way off. I found that you can just pry it out of its keeper slot and the pipe will slide out fine. The OEM intercooler came out quite easily. Getting the newer, bigger one in was, well, a little bit more of a challenge. Here's the difference in size. A lot more airflow and surface area on the VSRF intercooler. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie. Getting the bigger intercooler in was a two-person job. I managed to fight my way through with the help of one of my wife's boots, so you can definitely do it on your own, but I recommend getting some help if you can. I had seen some people claim that you had to cut this bit of rubber trim to make it fit, but I did not need to do this. The biggest issue I found with this VSRF intercooler is that, at least for the X3, the mounts are not exactly correctly oriented. The provided connecting block should match up exactly with the existing screw holes, but it does not. So I had to make some modifications to the connecting block, and I still couldn't make a solid connection. I believe I ended up with a single screw on each side connecting the intercooler. This worried me, so I repurposed a couple of trim screws and added an additional support bar underneath. Okay, so now on to the blow-off valve replacement and the start of my troubles. If you saw the previous episode, you will know that after turning on map 1 of the JB4 tune, we got a drivetrain failure. This was because the OEM blow-off valve is not equipped to handle the additional boost and gets stuck open. So I bought the Turbosmart blow-off valve to fix the problem. Replacing the blow-off valve turns out to be a pretty difficult task. It's situated out of reach and you need to use a set of extensions to remove it. I started on this and made some progress, but to compound the problem, the bolt started to strip. I got nervous at this point and decided to take it into the shop and have a professional with better tools take care of replacing it. Long story short, it was a pain, but the shop managed to get it swapped. Okay, next unexpected problem. The BMW charge pipe on the N55 is kind of notorious for being junk, I guess. I've heard it can fail even at the stock boost levels. So after I got the blow-off valve replaced, I turned the tune back on and took the X3 out for a test drive. I stepped on it and heard an explosion from the engine bay. I limped the car home and discovered that the charge pipe had blown off under the pressure. So I bought an aluminum FTP charge pipe. It comes in two pieces, which helps with the install. However, the installation caused another big problem that sent the X3 back to the shop. So you need to be careful when installing. More on that after we go through the actual install. You can see the layout here with the two aluminum pieces connected with a silicone coupler. It comes with all the hardware you need. You'll need to swap the sensor from the old charge pipe. The FTP charge pipe has ports to inject methanol, which I am not using for now, so I plugged them. I couldn't really capture the installation on video, so here's basically how it went. I slid the lower piece from the top down and connected it to the left side of the intercooler. I had the silicone coupler already attached. Once that was in place, then I slid the top half down and wiggled it into the coupler. This took a while, but eventually I managed to get it in place. To seat it into the intake, I used a breaker bar and gently pry it until it popped into place. Then I tightened the silicone coupler down. At the manifold, there is a clip that is provided to hold the charge pipe in place. This is where you need to ensure that the charge pipe is properly seated and where I resorted to the breaker bar and leverage. Okay, so that's that. And now on to the next problem, and a bit of a warning if you are installing this charge pipe. It turns out that when I was finding the charge pipe into place, I bent the transmission cooler line so that one of them was rubbing against the belt. I never noticed this. When I took the X3 out for a test drive, everything ran fine, but when I returned home, I could smell hot oil. The engine bay was completely splattered with fluid, and I had a sizable puddle of fluid on the ground. That was a huge mess and unexpected costs. So definitely make sure to check around the charge pipe after install to make sure nothing is out of whack or bent. And that would have been it for this video, except one other thing happened. I got another drivetrain failure, this time fuel related. In map 1 of the tune, the X3 was running fine, but under acceleration it suddenly began running rough like it wasn't getting fuel, and our dashboard lit up with warnings. After scanning, it looked like either the fuel pump or the fuel pump control module. The fuel pump actually came up without errors on my scan, and apparently the control module is known to overheat and cause symptoms like a fuel pump failure. Since these are pretty expensive, I bought a used module on eBay for under $50 as a means to test whether or not it was the module. By the way, it's very easy to replace. Just pop up the back seat and unplug the old one and plug in the new one. So far I have not had the issue, so it might be looking like the control module was the problem. I'm going to give that a month or so, and if no other problems, we'll probably buy an upgraded version of the control module. I put a link to the aftermarket one I'm interested in below. I guess that's it for now, but I would say that it seems like a lesson here is that when you mod an older BMW, be prepared for issues and unexpected costs and stress. Okay, thanks for watching and hope to see you in the next video.